Welcome back everyone to Formula 1 Transfer Talk, and a video that's long overdue. I've done videos in the past, I've done previous transfer talks talking about the future of Ferrari. Would Sebastian Vettel be the right fit for the team over the next couple of years? And since that episode, we've had the huge transfer saga that started off with Vettel announcing that he would no longer be racing for Ferrari, Carlos Sainz taking his place, and the whole cascade of transfers that has followed that. However, what is now the future of Sebastian Vettel? We know this is going to be his last year in red. We know he wants to stay in Formula 1. He's still got that hunger to be world champion. But on the flip side of that, what seats are available to him? And also what seats are available to him that he realistically wants to take a chance on? So today, in our transfer talks format, very laid back, very chilled. Of course, I want to know your thoughts in the comment section down below. We're going to be discussing all the different options that Vettel has in place, and give a few of my final feelings and predictions, I guess, about where he's going to be in the next couple of years. So as always, if you are new around here, feel free to subscribe. Of course, if you enjoyed today's video, like if you do, dislike if you didn't, or if you want to give back some feedback. But I want to start off with the story that's been doing the rounds for the last couple of weeks. Sebastian Vettel to Aston Martin. I think we've all been very caught up in the constant nature of Formula 1 at the moment. Back-to-back Grand Prix, Austria, Styria, Hungary. And this is the first weekend where we've really had chances to have a breather, chill out a little bit, and think about the transfer market. Think about different avenues drivers could go down, and just the season as a whole, really. And the big story is Vettel moving to Aston Martin. Why this is such a big story is the fact that Aston Martin pretty much already have two drivers in place for next season. Sergio Perez at the end of last year announced he'd signed a 3-year deal with Racing Point, and just for you who don't know, next season Racing Point are changing their name to Aston Martin, and that deal obviously is still in play. It's still coming into effect next season. The other driver is Lance Stroll, and if you don't know his backstory, his father Lawrence Stroll owns the team. He now owns the Aston Martin brand as well. And he's not currently under contract, Lance Stroll. However, you'd imagine that his father is going to want to keep him in that seat and keep his Formula 1 dream alive. So to get Vettel in that seat, there's going to have to be a few strings pulled behind closed doors, a few backdoor dealings to get Vettel in that seat. Now, I'm going to start off with Seb's point of view. Is Aston Martin a good place for him to go? Is it something he'd be interested in? And I think to answer those questions, yes and yes. Is it a good place for him to go? Well, we've already seen this year, Aston Martin, or Racing Point as they're currently known. I will just pick and choose each time I say their name on which one I go with. But this season, the team are looking very strong. Last weekend, Lance Stroll qualified third, finished fourth, and they're clearly more than a match for Ferrari this year. So for Vettel, going from a hugely historical team like Ferrari to a team like Aston Martin that next season are going to be a little bit more competitive than Ferrari, well, that makes sense. That's a bit of a no-brainer. And in the long term as well, though you'd expect Ferrari over the next couple of years to be able to make and bridge that gap back up to the front, Aston Martin also are a team that have plenty of funding, have lots of backing behind them, lots of determination to get to the front of the grid, and they're also a team that have plenty of history, albeit a little bit of a different route than Ferrari. But even back from the Jordan days, the Spiker days, Midland, Force India, they've always been a team that have tried and been really successful at punching above their weight. And I think a driver like Sebastian Vettel would look at that story, look at all the investment they've now got thanks to the new owners, and say, you know what, I could really be a team leader there and become the first ever Aston Martin Formula 1 world champion. It's got a nice ring to it. As a brand as well, we know Aston Martin is one of the most famous brands in the world, obviously helped by their connection with James Bond. I think that's more than fair to say. But just as a generic motor car brand, generic was not the right word to use, but we'll leave it in there, they are known globally. A huge car company. Even though I'm not a big car guy, I think we can all agree on that. So for a driver like Vettel, it's a hugely enticing project. However, for the team, is it the right decision for them? Is it worth all the hassle of picking between Stroll and Perez just to bring in an aging Sebastian Vettel? Well, Vettel is a 4-time world champion. That won't be the last time you hear me say that. However, there's no denying the last couple of years, he's not quite been on the level he was when he won those 4 world championships. So for Racing Point / Aston Martin, it would certainly be a risk. Judging their current drivers though, is Sergio Perez and Lance Stroll as appealing to investors, to sponsors and to fans as a Sebastian Vettel? And on a more basic and fundamental level, are Stroll and Perez as quick as Sebastian Vettel? Probably not. So you can understand for Racing Point, and with the big rebrand next year, they want to bring in a big marquee signing, a world-class Formula 1 driver. So you can understand why they would want to do it. But Perez himself, I think we can all agree, is a driver certainly capable of becoming, or at least already being, a world-class driver. But we've never really seen him in a championship or even race-winning competitive car. And what a hugely disappointing thing it would be if Sergio Perez, this driver who helped Force India stay in Formula 1, who consistently outperformed his car, just like the team has always been able to do, score podiums on occasions and seasons where he shouldn't have been able to, consistently be best of the rest in that midfield, and drag awful cars to fantastic finishes. What a dreadful time it would be to get rid of him. But to bring in a Vettel in his place, that would certainly be tempting. And for more casual Formula 1 fans out there, you're probably screaming at me, why don't you just take Perez and Vettel? And yeah, on paper, that would be the right thing to do. But we've already seen this season, Lance Stroll, finally himself with a semi-decent car, is doing a much better job than I would say he's ever done in Formula 1. There are certain caveats that he was Formula 3 champion, though that is slightly questionable on the route he got there, but he still was Formula 3 champion. He's got a podium in Formula 1 with a really awful Williams car, and he's a driver that I think is certainly getting better over the last few years in Formula 1. He's got age on his side over Perez and Sebastian Vettel, and of course the big factor is that his dad owns the team. So for Racing Point / Aston Martin, is it likely they're going to sign Vettel? Though it would cost them huge amounts of money to get not only the contract between themselves and Perez null and void, but also to lose the sponsors that Perez brings. I think the sponsors that Vettel brings, I think the backing and fan base Vettel brings would be beneficial to them. And in the long run, I think having a Vettel-Stroll lineup would be more beneficial to the team than Perez and Stroll. But then I would say Vettel-Perez is a very, very spicy lineup indeed, and one more than capable of helping the team push for world championships. And though it would really pain me to see Sergio Perez lose out on this seat, I do think this is incredibly likely that this is going to happen. We've already seen that Sergio Perez has been linked to other teams, and he's openly admitted that Alfa Romeo and Haas have contacted him about a drive next season. So this seems a deal that is all but done. And I think for Sebastian Vettel, it's the best option he has available. Hence, I've spent a hell of a long time talking about this one. But it's been on my mind for so long now. Hopefully, I've been able to express my thoughts there. Stroll, he's doing okay. But I think they really do, as a team, need that number one driver. And if they stick with Perez, fantastic. But Sebastian Vettel, I think, just adds that little bit extra to a team looking to go that step further in F1. But that all depends on Vettel refinding his form, refinding that mojo he had at Red Bull. And that certainly would be a huge gamble for a team like Aston Martin to take when they've already got a driver under contract like Sergio Perez. So what other options are there if Vettel doesn't decide to go down this Aston Martin route or the team don't want to take him? There has been talk about a move back to Red Bull Racing, and I won't spend too long on this one because I really don't think it's feasible. Max Verstappen is going to be that number one driver, and who they need in that other seat is a driver they know who's going to be able to consistently fight in that top 5, top 6 positions, score points and pick up podiums when their other driver retires or something happens during the race. And I think Albon fits that bill really, really well. Yes, this season it's been a little bit up and down, but you've got to remember that first race of the season, when Verstappen retired, Albon was there not only to pick up a podium, but potentially to go on to win that race before contact with Lewis Hamilton. The second race of the season, yes, Albon wasn't on the pace of Max, but he was still a consistent fourth place over that weekend. Hungary really struggled in qualifying. That car wasn't set up great for him or Max Verstappen, but did a great comeback during the Grand Prix. And to lose out on a driver like Alex to bring in a Sebastian Vettel, who's clearly hurting at the moment, not performing at his peak levels, would be a huge risk to the team, because Vettel, realistically, is a short-term option. He's only going to be in Formula 1, you'd imagine, for a maximum of maybe 6 or 7 seasons, and that's really at a push. For Red Bull, in Alex Albon, even in Pierre Gasly or Danny Kvyat, their other 2 drivers in AlphaTauri, they've got 3 drivers there that are going to be able to do a solid job and not upset the balance too much. Bringing in a Sebastian Vettel, although it would be a great nostalgia kick for Formula 1 and for even some of us newer Formula 1 fans, from a team perspective, the dramas that could cause, I don't think it's worth it. And you've got to remember as well, even when Vettel was at Red Bull, it wasn't sunshine and rainbows. The most toxic relationship in Formula 1 I've ever witnessed was the Vettel-Webber relationship. I think that was worse than Hamilton-Rosberg. I was never privy to watching the Senna-Prost one. But even when Ricciardo came in, there still wasn't something quite right. There wasn't quite that harmonious bond within the team that they currently have at the moment. Albeit last year was a little bit messy, but you know what I'm getting at. And Seb is older now. Seb would understand that Max is the number 1. How would he be able to develop into that number 2 driver role? I'm not too sure. And I think for Red Bull, it's just too big of a risk. For Vettel, though, if they offered him a contract, move into a top team like Red Bull, I don't really think you can turn it down. But over an option to go to Aston Martin, be a team leader, I would personally pick Aston Martin. But that's very subjective on whether Seb is going to spend the next couple of years or the next 5 or 6 years in F1. But I still think Aston Martin is the more realistic and more desirable option for a driver like Vettel. There's also cars further down the grid. The 2 that have been thrown around at the moment, Alfa Romeo and Haas. Both cars use Ferrari engines, and both cars I think would be more than happy of having a driver like Vettel in their car. I'll start with Alfa Romeo, a team that currently have Kimi Raikkonen and Antonio Giovinazzi, both of whom end their contracts at the end of this season. I think the big thing with this team is whether, first of all, Kimi Raikkonen decides to extend his contract. I think that's unlikely. But also whether the team choose to keep Giovinazzi. And just for those unaware, what's a little bit different and special about Alfa Romeo is they've got one seat that is chosen by the team. The team's DNA is Sauber, and so we usually call that the Sauber seat. The team choose it. The other seat is designated by Ferrari. Alfa Romeo are pretty much the closest thing we have to a Ferrari B team in Formula 1, so they often choose one of their youngsters to go in that second seat. At the moment, that's Giovinazzi, and the Sauber seat is Kimi Raikkonen. If Vettel went to Sauber, he would have to take the place of Raikkonen, you would imagine. It would be very strange for Ferrari to put him in their young driver's seat. But that all depends on whether the team want to keep Giovinazzi. Ferrari have so many young drivers in Formula 2 doing amazingly well this year, and I am so convinced that they're going to try and promote 1, if not 2, or maybe 3 of their juniors to Formula 1 next season. Certainly that'll be one of the seats at Alfa Romeo, if not 2, and I think at a push they may even try to put one of their youngsters at Haas. So for Vettel, what he needs, if he has only one option to go to Alfa Romeo, he needs the team to only take one junior driver, let's say Robert Schwartzman for this example, and not want to keep Giovinazzi as that Sauber seat driver. They will need them to say, Giovinazzi, thank you, we need someone else in the car now. They'll bring in Vettel to take Kimi Raikkonen's place, and there's no denying Vettel would be a brilliant driver to have at a team like Alfa Romeo, a brilliant driver for the team to fight in that midfield, but also be a great driver to have alongside a Ferrari Junior. We've seen last year, yes, his relationship with Charles Leclerc was tense at times. I think he certainly helped Leclerc certainly get over a lot of his issues he had in qualifying the year prior. And I think for Robert Schwartzman, what a brilliant driver to learn off of, a Sebastian Vettel. But for Vettel, is that really an environment he wants to go to? I don't think so. I think he is a driver still hungry to win, still has the talent to win, and I think that would be quite damaging to his reputation in Formula 1 if he took a huge step back to the team that arguably are the slowest on the grid at the moment, fighting with Williams and Haas for that best of the worst title, if you want to call it that. Likewise, if Vettel moved to Haas, I think it'd be a very, very similar story. The only difference with Haas is that they're not a B team, they're not a junior team, they're very much an independent privateer racing team. They are a team like Williams that its main focus isn't marketing, isn't to promote their car brand, it's to race, it's to win. And I wonder whether that kind of ethos within a team is going to encapsulate Vettel to make the move to that kind of team. I'm not sure, though, where the team currently are in the grid. That's an appealing option for a driver like Vettel. Haas need drivers. I've said for the last couple of years, I think the big thing Haas need is a big refresh of both their drivers. And that pains me to say, losing Grosjean and K-Mag from the grid. But I think the team do just need a bit of fresh blood and would really benefit from stealing one of those Ferrari juniors if they can from Formula 2, whether that's Schwartzman, Schumacher, Callum Ilott, any of those. I think Haas just needs something new, something fresh to the table. But if they could also bring in a Sebastian Vettel, for them, a team that already are unsure whether they're financially going to be able to stay in F1, the sponsorships that would come with that, I wonder whether that would outweigh Vettel's salary and really help out the team. And again, push the team marketing-wise, not only in America, North America, South America, but in Europe as well, where the team struggles a little bit for revenues. It's something that Haas would really have to consider. And I think first things first, they just need to make sure they sort the car out before they sign any world-class drivers. But again, for Vettel, is that an option he's going to find interesting? I'm not really too sure. And the final couple of options I'm going to talk about are a little bit left of field. So I think they're unlikely, but I think they'd be a little bit of fun. And the first one, sadly enough, involves retirement, or at least a sabbatical. And I think Martin Brundle spoke about this briefly on Sky last weekend, and it caught my imagination quite a bit. Could Sebastian Vettel take a year off? Could he take a role at Mercedes as a development driver, an ambassadorial role potentially? And then could he, if Hamilton retires, if Bottas retires or moves on as well, join up with George Russell in 2022, in 2023? It's a possibility. It's certainly a drive that Vettel would be so interested in. We know Mercedes are the best car on the grid. Mercedes also have expressed that they would quite like a German driver in their car at some point or another. And Vettel would be a four-time world champion with plenty of experience that I think would be a nice match for George Russell if they went to the team. The only issue I have with this is that there are so many ifs and buts and so many little certainties with it. I think it's far too big of a risk for Vettel if there is an option at the likes even of an Alfa Romeo or an Aston Martin. I think he's better off staying in F1 now and proving his ability and kind of capturing some of that reputation he's lost over the last couple of years, bring it back to himself. However, if there is an option the next couple of years, if there's an option to say, look Seb, we've given Bottas a 1 year extension, but if you have a year out, you can then come back. I think that's an option he will certainly consider and potentially take. But it would be a hell of a lot of fun to see Vettel end his career at Mercedes like Michael Schumacher did. And where Vettel has failed at Ferrari and's been very open over the last week that he's disappointed he's kind of not carried on this Schumacher dream he has held at Ferrari and to win the world championship with Ferrari, maybe he'll be able to flip that around and win a world title at Mercedes, unlike Schumacher was able to do. And maybe that'll save his career a little bit. But again, it's a long shot. And maybe he will just take a few years off, do what Raikkonen did at the end of 2009, do what Alonso did a couple of years ago as well. Just take a couple of years to assess the grid, keep your name in a few doors, keep saying hello, show up to the paddock every now and then get yourself in a competitive seat. Maybe if Alonso doesn't work out at Renault and they're getting better, or Verstappen moves on and moves back to Red Bull, something like that. Retirement though, I don't think it's in Vettel's plans. I don't think that's first choice. And the final thing I'm going to talk about that I think Vettel would consider before retirement is Formula E. And I know some of you already are thinking, Formula E, I wouldn't really care if Vettel went there. But I think from a Formula E standpoint, and sorry I keep saying this all the time when I mention Formula E, but one of the big things they need now to push themselves even further, they've got World Championship status. They've got all these brilliant teams joining, Porsche and Mercedes this season. Ferrari look like they're interested in as well, potentially. We've already got Audi. We've already got Virgin, Techeetah, Citroen, BMW. The list goes on. Andretti, part of that BMW setup as well. I think they need a world-class driver. They need an Alonso, a Raikkonen, a Vettel, a Hamilton, someone who's won a world championship in Formula 1. No disrespect to Jacques Villeneuve, who raced in Formula E back in the first couple of seasons. But they need that big marquee driver. They've got Van Dorn, they've got Verline, they've got Massa. These, and no disrespect to them, these B-spec Formula 1 drivers that could never quite get a title, but they need that big marquee signing now. And Vettel for Formula E, what a signing that would be. I always said it about Rosberg. I thought he would have been a great fit for the Mercedes outfit in Formula E. And there are seats available. Audi and Porsche, two huge German manufacturers, perfectly capable of winning races in the category, have seats available, though the Porsche one looks like it's going to Verline, and Verline and Lotterer, what a lineup that would be. But getting Vettel, at least in one of those seats, he's going to be in with a shot of a title, even if he's one of the cars that's a little bit further back, but I don't think he'd need to. Audi, they've got Rast, who's taken the place of Daniel Abt for the last few rounds of the season, and I would imagine he's going to keep his seat for the next couple of years, thanks to the fact that Audi have dropped out of DTM. However, if Vettel's an option, just for 1 year contract or something, what a lot of fun that would be. Again, I think some people would say it would hurt Vettel's reputation, but I think if he went to Formula E, won the championship, learnt the car, first of all, I think it'd be really refreshing for him. We've seen a lot of drivers go to Formula E and say how much more they've enjoyed it than Formula 1, but maybe you've got to take that with a pinch of salt if they can't get back to Formula 1. But I think the racing itself is far more predictable, is easier to overtake, and maybe that would just reignite some passion for Vettel a little bit with racing. Though I don't think he really needs that. I think he needs just a team somewhere just to take him in, to give him that encouragement, reinforce him that he is a world champion, he does have ability, and then I think he'll be able to re-find his mojo. There's seats in Formula E. I would love to see him in Formula E, but I don't think his business is done in Formula 1 just yet. And I think he needs to prove that he is the real deal. And a team like Aston Martin, though again, just to reiterate, I would hate to see Perez lose that drive. What a story that would be. And I think Aston Martin, Sebastian Vettel, I think it sounds right. But as always, that is your episode of Formula 1 Transfer Talk. And I'd love to know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Have I mentioned a team or not mentioned a team? Throw it down there as well. Tell me how right I am, how wrong I am. I think Aston Martin is where he's going to end up. I think it sounds right. But hey, I could very well be wrong. As always, if you are new around here, feel free to subscribe. Like if you enjoyed it, really helps the channel. Dislike if you didn't, that also helps me know if you like or didn't like this kind of content. Thank you all very much for watching. Have a good day, and I hope to see you in the next one.